put that thing up for me. Oh, Assalamu alaikum. Dear listeners, thank you for joining me, Raheema Caratela, on the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM for the Community Heroes show. Just as I'm sort of getting into this whole presenter gig, next week will be my last show, and I'll be joined in the studio with Rabia Hanan and Diane Johnson to talk about the importance of Christian-Muslim dialogue. Some of the topics we will discuss are strikingly similar between both of our respective faith traditions, and next week we'll be sharing some of these with you, as well as opening up to any questions that you may have. This week I'm focusing on fostering and adoption, and I want lots of participation from our listeners, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions to ask or for our panel. You can also text in the show, or you can call our studio or leave a message on our Facebook Live. The studio number is 0745092584. That's our text number, and any texts that come into our service will be anonymized, so feel free to ask any questions without fear. So in the studio today, I've got the County Council's Fostering and Adoption team. Now, Bilal, who I went to school with 2 decades ago, gosh, I'm really old, and Denise Lacey from the team, and I also have Kasim, who is currently a foster carer. So we'll be talking to him as well shortly. Now, as I said, the audience at home, you may have lots of questions about how you can become a foster carer, how you can support a family who may be going through the process. There might be all sorts of considerations that you may have come across. There might be some horror stories you might have heard of about dealings with the council or county council. And it would really help, actually, if we were able to dispel some of these myths here today, so that our audience and our listeners at home can understand what is genuine and what the processes actually are. And we'll obviously have some first-hand experience from yourself as well, which will be great, Kasim. And again, if you want to text our show, the number is 0745092584, and our telephone number, if you wanted to call in, is 0116 212 9324, and our producer, thank you, will be putting up any questions on the screen for us. As and when they come in, we'll be taking your questions. Now, I just wanted to kind of open up the discussion, really. And, I do have a range of questions for you all, ranging from, the processes to criteria, some of the barriers that you face. But before I do that, I have got some statistics from the National Statistics website. And those include children looked after in England. So these are not stats for the whole of the country, but just for England from 2017 to 2018. And we had, actually, this is quite a massive amount, over 75,000 children were in the care of local authorities. And that is actually 1,000 children more than there was the previous year. In Leicestershire County, we've got 581 children in care. Is that right, Denise?
That's right, yeah.
And so these numbers are quite high. And one of the things I did want to look at today, actually, was what potentially we can do to reduce the amount of young people and children that come through the system to begin with. What can be done in regards to that. Now, within the Islamic tradition, we know that there's a huge emphasis within Islam to care for orphans, and adoption and fostering are highly commendable acts within our tradition. Now, Islamic tradition and history has numerous teachings and a hadith that encourages the care of vulnerable children and orphans. The prophetic tradition asserts, I and the person who looks after an orphan and provides for him will be in paradise like this. So the Prophet put his index and middle finger together. Indeed, the Prophet Muhammad and Moses, peace be upon them both, were both orphans. Furthermore, as an adult, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, adopted a child. It should not be considered a coincidence or accidental that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was an orphan and that he had gone on to adopt a child. In fact, this should serve to highlight the high status of orphans within the Islamic tradition. Now, some people would say that there's a huge underrepresentation of Muslims and Muslim foster carers and adopters. As a Muslim community, are we failing in their obligation to take care of vulnerable children? So that this is something that I would also like to explore with yourselves today. And again, if you have any texts for us, the studio number is 07450925084, and you are listening to the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. Right, so I have got lots of questions for you both, and I'm sure our time will go by really quickly. So, Denise, I'll just open up with you. So can you explain to me the difference between fostering and adoption?
Yeah, I certainly can. Morning, and thank you very much for inviting us in here, Raheema. The difference between fostering and adoption is around a word that you'll hear us talk about a lot, which is permanence. So children and young people come into the care system for lots and lots of different reasons, and sometimes they just need to be supported for a short period of time before they can go potentially home to their birth families, for example. In that situation, then that would be fostering. During that time, they would need to be cared for by our cohort of foster carers with a view that they would then be going home, or there would be different plans made for them. Adoption is an absolute permanent process. So if a child is placed for adoption, then all rights to their birth family would be severed. And through an adoption order, if you adopt a child, then they would be your child as though they were born to you. So it's absolutely...
That's where the permanence comes
permanent in that respect.
Right.
So fostering, most children can be in the care system for anything up to about 18 months in terms of short-term fostering. But some children need to stay with us on a longer term basis, so they would be in permanent long-term fostering without adoption happening. So you can still care for a child in the care system on a longer term basis without adoption.
And in terms of the split of people that you come across within Leicestershire County, how is the split of children who have been adopted and who are in the care system still?
Well, I mean, currently out of 581, there are around 20 to 25 of those children where there are plans in place for adoption to be the way forward for them. So, so it's quite a small proportion of that number. The other remaining part of that number is made up of children who have sort of come into the care system and through emergencies that have happened in their home life, and actually they'll be cared for potentially a short period of time. There are also children in that cohort that have perhaps been in the care system for some time, and actually they are moving through different types of foster care. So they may have been in short-term foster care, and it may be that actually now they are going to remain on a long-term basis with their fostering family until they reach adulthood. So it's quite a mixed picture at any time.
And do any of your children and young people get transferred from different local authorities, or would you say that the majority of those in Leicester placements are from Leicester?
Yeah, so each local authority, so obviously we're Leicestershire County Council, and we are responsible for any child who comes into the care system who lives in Leicestershire. If, for instance, a child is in Leicester City, then they would be cared for by Leicester City as a local authority.
Okay, that's great. Now, you've explained to us the difference between fostering and adoption. Bilal, I'm just going to come to you now. If you could go through the benefits of fostering and adoption, and also I know with your Islamic hat on, if you want to comment from an Islamic perspective, you're welcome to do so also.
Okay, assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope everyone is okay. I think we're quite lucky today that we've got Qasim over here to share first-hand experience of the kind of benefits. But from a kind of a general point of view, I know that not recently, but it's kind of ongoing that we're always putting a lot of emphasis on serving the orphans and doing good and mashallah and alhamdulillah, a lot of people are doing so much kind of good, and every individual thinks to themselves about how they can make a difference to people. And I know you mentioned about the Islamic issues around fostering and adoption and all the kind of information in regards to it, but there is, from an Islamic point of view, there are certain things in adoption that you have to take into consideration in adoption to be permissible for you. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned about looking after orphans, and it's quite general that they're referred to as orphans, but I think it's important to kind of just highlight how, from a jurisprudence point of view, how we've kind of classed them as kind of orphans. So they would kind of sit under the umbrella of orphans, and there's been so much kind of work done around why they would be classed as kind of orphans, because yes, they have parents, but these links are not there anymore.
So they're severed.
That's right. Yeah. They're kind of abandoned children, and it's a communal obligation.
Yeah.
In terms of...
it's a communal obligation upon the Muslim community, would you say?
Yeah. There's been a lot of work, mashallah, done by Sheikh Zubair Karim as well, as part of Penny Appeal in 2007, about coming to a conclusion and drawing an analysis supported by a lot of scholars around why this might be the case. So answering your question about what are the benefits, first and foremost, I think there's a sense of self-satisfaction that you're doing something good. Secondly is a child has a right to be nurtured, cared for, showed affection to, and by somebody fostering an adoption, they are very part of a child contributing to a better society, because we know that when children have unmet needs, there's a huge risk of offending. You've got the criminal aspect of things, you've got the relationship aspect of things, so there's so many things potentially that can be kind of damaging for them. So that's the kind of other benefit. You've obviously mentioned the hadith Islamic of how we would class them as kind of orphans. I think another point which is quite sensitive but important to mention is, as we're going more and more every day to day, we're seeing issues of Islamophobia, right? And if we are looking after non-Muslim children, these children are going to be our future generation, and not all people that are non-Muslim have had the privilege to live with Muslim families, or even interact with them. So it does definitely contribute to a better society.
Yeah, I did see a video not so long ago about a young girl who was with a Muslim family, and she really felt at home with them, even though she was a non-Muslim, and she got to see the positive side of Islam portrayed there. Now, you mentioned that Penny Appeal research that was done at Coventry University, and the figures they came up with were that 4,500 of the children who are in care at the moment are Muslim.
Okay.
So, and again, we talked about the fact that it's highly commendable, and the Allah also talks in the Quran about orphans, and to give them their full rights and to treat them with kindness and compassion, and to not oppress them, and make sure that even when it comes to distributing their their wealth, that's all done equally. And there's a great emphasis on that, and I think as Muslim communities we have an ethical responsibility to ensure that these children who are homeless and parentless have families to look after them. And we're a religion of kindness and compassion, and we have to make sure that as Muslims we are getting involved in supporting some of these children who have come from actually some very difficult childhoods and backgrounds. Now I'm going to come back to you, Denise, with another question. We talked about fostering and adoption, but what are some of the processes and what is the criteria if you wanted to become a foster carer, or if you wanted to go through for the full adoption process?
Okay, and that's a question that obviously we deal with every day, because I think a lot of people, many people say, oh, I've thought about becoming a foster carer for such a long time, and they'll say, well, why didn't you ring us? Why didn't you get in touch? And a lot of people say, well, actually, I was a bit worried, or I felt a bit unsure about the process. And I totally understand how people would feel, because it can seem quite worrisome thinking
daunting,
about it.
Isn't
daunting,
it? Yeah,
absolutely. So, which is why we want to come out into the community and say it's okay, we're human, we're kind, please get in touch. But the process, in terms of, there are some statutory guidelines that we have to adhere to. So, in order to foster, you would need to be over 21. You would need to have your own home. It doesn't matter whether you own your home, you've got a mortgage, or you own it outright, or you rent it. That's absolutely fine. What we're more interested in is your stability. So is that somewhere that you're going to be able to live for the foreseeable future?
Yeah.
So it's stability that we're interested in. So in terms of location, if you live anywhere in the whole of Leicestershire, even on the outskirts of Leicestershire, or even into the city of Leicester, absolutely, that's fine. We're happy to consider people in that respect.
Okay, so if there's any listeners out there who are living in the city, you'd be happy to consider them also to be prospective carers?
Yes, we would, yeah. I mean, each local authority, so for instance, Leicester City would also have their own appeal for foster carers and adopters. And, we all have the same sort of drive and motivation to find people. And actually, I would always say, please don't be limited by where you live, because actually the act of fostering is the same wherever you are. And in terms of the support that you get, pretty much local authorities are all of the same ilk, so you will get all of that support. So in terms of a bedroom, and many people say, oh, I'd love to foster, but we don't have a spare bedroom. So you would need to have a spare bedroom to foster one of our children. However, if you don't have a spare bedroom, you could consider looking after our babies 0 to 2 years old. Because it's so, I know, it's so important that actually they're with you. They need to be held, and they need to be part of your family and loved as you would absolutely your own child. So if you're thinking of fostering and a barrier is that you don't have a spare room, then you could consider that. However, we do need people who are looking after our babies. We would need one of you, if there's two of you, to be at home full time to look after that baby.
It's a full-time job, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And obviously what we wouldn't want is for that baby then to be taken to a nursery or a childminder or dropped off anywhere else. They need to be with you and create that bond and unconditional love for however long their journey is with you, whether they progress to adoption or whether they go back to their birth family or there are other plans made. During that time, they need to be absolutely nurtured and loved and cared for. So the bedroom isn't necessarily a barrier in that respect.
Just just going back to the what you mentioned about babies and what we expect of foster carers with the nursery. Now, sometimes that may be done with your own kind of children. It's important to know that even our babies, they've got issues like fetal alcohol syndrome. There's been a global developmental delay. They've been neglected. They've been abused, and because of that, they've missed out on the core months and weeks of attachment, which means that that caregiver needs to be kind of present there all the time. So it's not the case of this is our requirement.
It's generally
it's because
that's
this is the need of
the
this is
child.
the need of a
Yes,
child.
yes.
Yeah.
Kasim, you are a foster carer of a baby, am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
And how old is it, a he or she?
It's a she, and it's coming up to 7 months, little over 7 months now.
7 months since you've had her, and how?
It's that's baby's age. We've had her since mid of February.
And how and what's that experience been like for you?
Overall, it's all going well, and it's a joy to look after a baby of this age. And I think it is all going really, really well now that we're getting into the routine.
Yeah.
We're managing ourselves more better, and we can now sort of cater our lifestyles around child's need. So initially, it's a bit of a struggle because you don't know the baby, and slowly getting to know the baby's personality as well, and especially their needs. And once you recognize that, once you work towards that, you can see the difference that you're making in baby's life as well.
7 months is such a cute age, right?
Yeah,
You're getting lots of smiles and cuddles, but you're probably also getting lots of sleepless nights.
Absolutely. As Denise alluded to the point that it is a full-time job, especially if you're looking at the age group, which is 0 to 2, which is what in our case. So it's absolutely true that it is a full-time job. But we tag team, me and my wife, so we sort of share some responsibilities here and there so that we can also, carry on with our life as per routine in terms of our own professional careers and so on. So, yeah. And
I also just add to that is that the child that you have is from a non-Muslim family.
Yes,
it's a non-Muslim child as well.
That's right. Yeah.
And
that's correct.
And how comfortable were you with that? Did you have any questions? What was going through your mind when they told you that this child is a non-Muslim child?
There's a bit of strangeness, I would say, to begin with, but I think we got over the fact that it's someone else's baby, let alone a white baby, in the first 3 days, literally. And baby took about 5 to 6 days to start feeling comfortable, because it's a move. Baby has been moved from someone else to someone else now. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. A baby is a baby regardless of their ethnic background. And like I said, we got over the fact in the first 3 days, and it's really a blessing in disguise in terms of what we expected and what it turned out to be. It's a really joyful experience at the moment.
And we're going to come back to you, Kasim, after the break. But just before I go, and I'll come back to you at the end as well, but did you feel that there was enough support for you when you were going through this process?
Absolutely. I think starting from the open days that county offers, I think this is one thing I would encourage your listeners to actually go to. This is the first step. If you have any questions, or if there are any questions in mind, just go to these open days and just listen to the presentation, see what they have to offer, and that's really the first point of support, and then there's continuing support as well.
Great. Kasim, we'll be back with you after the break. We've got a few more seconds before we go to our break, but just a quick reminder, you are listening to the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us again on the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. Now, just before we went to the break, we were talking to Kasim about the process that he went through to become a foster carer and some of the processes, and we're going to talk about some of the criteria that is necessary to become an a foster carer. We've had a text come in. Thank you for your text. It says, right now, more than 60,000 children are living in the care system. To me, this is absolutely shocking. We have to help these children, Muslims or non-Muslims. It shouldn't matter. Thank you for that. I think, I can't agree more. And that's why we're doing this push today on Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM to get the word out there and to let people know what the process is, and if they wanted to get involved in either fostering or adoption, what support systems are available for them. So Kasim, I'm just going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you've got a 7-year-old girl in care with you, and I know from a personal experience you've talked about what that was like, and because she is white, how that was a bit of a shock to your system at first, but in time, within a couple of days, it wasn't an issue then, really. And
yes, exactly. I wouldn't say it was a shock, because I think we opted for, we were quite open-minded to begin with, but there was a bit of a strangeness, I would say, because you don't know how the baby would behave. And that would be, I think, common across all babies of that age anyway. But I think it's also important to highlight that how welcoming everyone around us was in terms of Muslim friends and non-Muslim friends equally. So everyone was just so welcoming, and she's loved by so many, and people bringing in flowers and gifts and clothes for her. Not only people on our street, but my work colleagues. So I work at the university in Leicester. So she was equally welcomed by people from all different ethnic backgrounds. So this truly was a very, very surprising. So we did not expect that to happen. So we thought there would be people who would be just raising their eyebrows in terms of why we in terms of the match, particularly Muslim versus non-Muslim. But I think she was just welcomed by everyone, and it's been wonderful.
And what about the wider public? I know you've talked about you've had a good reception from friends and colleagues.
Yeah.
But what about when you're going shopping or you're out and about? And do you get any like odd looks or
nothing that
people wondering why there's this little white baby with I'm assuming that your other half, your wife, is also Indian,
yes.
Asian?
Yes. That is true. I think we kind of have that in mind. We expected it to happen to some degree, but nothing out of the ordinary as of yet. If anything, people have said that my wife and the child, they resemble each other.
Oh wow!
And that has been said by so many number of people. It's hard to believe, because we initially thought people are just saying just because they want to be nice to us, but we realized that maybe there is a resemblance now. So they say when you're looking after a baby of this age, the mother and the child, they start to resemble each other in some shape or form. I don't know. Maybe it's just love.
See, the child placed with you is not going to change colour.
Yeah,
it's obviously going to stay the same. What needs to change is your mentality, how you're open-minded. And I think with Qasim, what he's done is he's accepted it himself, that I'm looking after a non-Muslim child, and that's because I'm quite passionate about fostering, and I want to serve humanity. I want to make a difference to children. So he's not... it would be fair to say he's not that bothered if he gets stares or looks or anything like that, because he's accepted himself. And with anything, it has its difficulties and challenges when you come out of your comfort zone.
And you're his overseeing.
I'm his supervising social worker. That's right.
Right.
So
and the child also has a social worker attached to that.
Yeah. So when a child is in care, a child would have a social worker, and a foster carer would also have a social worker known as a supervising social worker. And I will talk about more about this afterwards as part of the kind of support. But the child social worker and supervising social worker, together with the foster carers, are part of the whole team. The child is in the center. We always try and strive and ensure that everything happens in the best interest of that child. But my support out there to Qasim in particular is about giving him that emotional support, some of his feelings, some of his wife's feelings about the process, how they feel about things, any issues they have, the finance aspect of it, any training needs, and someone who they feel that we can talk to without kind of being judged or that having, a kind of an impact. And that would include some challenges and conversations regarding, from a cultural aspect, whether it's a religious aspect, just to anything to make their fostering more kind of smooth and a better experience.
Oh, that sounds amazing. It sounds like there's a lot in place there. How often does Bilal come to me with you?
Are you trying to rate me now? Are you trying to rate me?
I think there's the level of support is just amazing, and we're very lucky to have Bilal as our supervising social worker. I think initially, because you get overwhelmed by the whole fostering thing, because we don't have children of our own, which makes things a little bit tricky in terms of caring for the baby for the first time in your care, in your long term. So we have looked after babies. So I think Denise would probably expand on that. You would need, if you really want to look after 0 to 2 years, then you would need to have some sort of childcare experience, so that which can be built on later on as well. Even when you don't have children of our own, you can practice on friends' children, I guess. So yes, talking about the support, initially, yes, we were, I think it was maybe twice a week at least at the beginning, because you do need a lot of support.
2 visits a week.
Yes.
Yeah, and how long
get into trouble for that.
How long would they be, those visits?
Yeah, the visits vary between looking at what the needs of those carers are. So if you've got brand new carers, much of your support is going to be about getting the process, seeing how things happen. Because once a child is placed, your focus is more on the practical aspect of things about that child rather than, the kind of procedures. So it could range. It could. I mean, and this is how it was with Qasim. I went to once a week, sometimes twice a week, but then go in once fortnight, then once a month. But we often see. It's recommended that we see between 4 to 6 weeks our carers.
Yeah. Just to remind our listeners out there, if you have any questions for our panel, please do text in. Our text number is 07450 925084. You are listening to Ramadan Special on EAVA 102.5 FM. Now, I'm just going to cut to Denise, if that's okay, Qasim. I will come back to you, I promise. But Denise, I'm really interested to know what your criteria is for becoming a carer. And I know that, there will be a whole panel who then also looks and assesses people's suitability. But, do some people feel that you're going to scrutinize every aspect of their lives? Everything from how many children they might have, what their motivation is to adopt, and, how can that make a difference? How can that affect some of the eligibility criteria?
I think you're absolutely right in the sense that people often feel quite petrified, and as though they are going to be asked lots and lots of questions under a spotlight.
Big Brother, yeah.
That sort of scenario, which I totally understand. I think it might be helpful to start from the perspective of why do we need to know about who you are as a potential carer? And I always take that back to the children. So currently, today, we have 581 children in our care. They're the most vulnerable children and young people in the county, and they're dependent on us to make the right decisions for them. So with that in mind, that's what I always say to people. Please don't feel that this is a personal invasion on you. Actually, we want to make sure, first of all, that you'll be right for fostering, but that actually fostering will be right for you, for your family, for your current circumstances at the moment. It's very rare that we would turn somebody away and say, no, actually fostering is never going to be right for you. But, frequently we do speak to people and say, okay, we've got a little bit more information and we feel that this might not be the right time for you, or perhaps just wait until this has happened, or you've built this extension on your home, etc.
So it can be for very practical reasons that you may say, actually, no, not at this time, you're not suitable.
And ultimately, our role is absolutely not to persuade people to foster.
Okay.
It's to provide people with all of the information and answer as many questions as possible so that you can make an informed decision as to whether fostering is right for you, right for your family, whether that's children, not children, and your current situation in life. What we don't want to do is to cause any worry or distress to people. We certainly don't want to put people through a process where we feel that actually it's unlikely that they would succeed and become a foster carer.
So you'll just tell them at
We'd
that
be
first hurdle.
absolutely open and honest with regard to that. So at this point, is it okay if I give people the contact details?
And also if you have details of when the next information sessions are and where they're held, I think our listeners will find that really useful for anyone who's interested and wants to have that face-to-face connection with somebody.
Yeah, which always helps. I think it's always better to look somebody in the eye and have a chat. But you are very welcome to call my team. And the telephone number there is 0116 305 0505. So you can speak to one of the team. They'll be happy to take your call and answer any questions that you've got. They can also email you some further information. If you want to have a look on our website, then that is www.fosteringleicestershire.com. So there's lots of other information on there. You will also find information on that website about our Find Out About Fostering events and our Find Out About Adoption events. We thought that we'd give them very simple names so you know actually what they are. So come along and find out about fostering or adoption. So in terms of location, they take place at County Hall, which is Glenfield. They take place in the evening, so we try to accommodate people that are at work or doing school runs, etc. So we just ask that you come along. Our events start at 6:30, so we ask if you can arrive for about 6:15 in time to register at the door and get yourself a drink and a biscuit. We do offer biscuits as well. And come on in. At our fostering events, you'll hear from some of our foster carers, which is always valuable to speak to people, as with Kasim, about their own personal experiences. And we'll talk to people, pretty much as we're doing today, about what's involved in the event, in the actual process of fostering. So the next date that we've just had one this week. So the next date for our fostering event is Wednesday, the 12th of June. And that, like I say, is at 6:30 at County Hall in Glenfield. But they are running every few weeks, about every 3 weeks, so you're welcome to come along. You can just turn up, or you can email us or ring us and tell us that you're planning on coming. You can bring your children, you can bring family members. Anybody that is going to be involved with you is part of what we would consider a fostering family. If you have got children of your own, then we'd absolutely say involve them, bring them along. It might not be the most exciting night of their lives, but actually it's good that they feel part of that process. And we're always absolutely delighted to meet younger people as well.
Oh, that's great. Sounds like a really informative event. And actually, I was at an interfaith forum meeting at County Hall, and your presentation was on. And I got a bit sidetracked, and that's when I sort of met Bilal, and we kind of I hadn't seen him in 20 years, and we got talking, and I thought that this topic is a really important one to talk about and also to highlight. I've got 2 questions from one of our listeners. So, firstly, if you live within an extended family setup, 2 to 3 generations under one roof,
Yep.
does every adult family member need to go through the application and interview process? And the second question is for the brother who is fostering the baby. How hard for you and your wife will it be if she goes home or goes to a new home? So we'll start with you, Bilal, because you do assessments. So
Actually, I don't do
Oh, yeah,
assessments, and I think Denise
yeah.
is going to
right,
be
Denise does the assessment. Okay.
And this is a really common question that we have coming through. In this day and age, so many people live with second and third generations. And I think it's really important for us to address this. So if, for instance, you have your parents living with you or an auntie or an uncle, then of course they are part of your home, part of your fostering family and part of your support network. In terms of their likelihood of being involved in that child's time of being in care with you, we'd want to understand, are they there all of the time? Would they be taking care of the child as well? So that would be about understanding you and the makeup of your family. Everybody that's over the age of 18 living in the house would have to have a DBS check.
Right. Okay.
So it used to be known as the CRB check.
To check their criminal
Absolutely,
record or
yeah,
the background.
And as you can
offences,
appreciate, the reason why we do that, and that's as much about us checking, obviously, that we know who you are, but also ultimately it's about protecting you as well and making sure that actually fostering is a good decision. So we would involve other members of the fostering household, but it's very much a case by case basis. So they would all have to be DBS checked and part of the process and be ready and willing to be part of that process as well, but they wouldn't necessarily be wholly involved as the actual applicants would be.
Right, thank you, Denise. And Kasim, the question to you about how would you feel if
I think I'll be lying if I say that would be easy, because we put our heart and soul in looking after this baby. And I think ultimately the brighter side is that if child can be reunited to their birth parent, that's the best outcome that they can have. So this is something we basically sign up for as foster carers, that we will always put child's interest at first. So yes, it will be hard to let go of a child after a few months when it's time to move out, because you develop so much attachment with them.
Now, given obviously I'm their supervising social worker, I would be kind of thinking ahead and making sure that that process is less painful for them as possible. So I would be having discussions with them around, changing the way they kind of think, that yes, baby is going, but you've managed to make a difference. Look how much progress there's been made, and your journey was still here. There are many children out there who needs to now benefit from you. So this is the kind of support that I would kind of be offering. I'm just conscious that you've called us for an hour, and it doesn't justify this topic at all.
I know, isn't the time just going by really fast?
There's
We've
many
got about 5 minutes
crucial
left.
things that need to be kind of mentioned. So if you don't mind, I think it's quite important for our listeners to know the types of fostering that's out there. So
yeah, because when I was doing my research, I came across quite a few independent fostering agencies. So they IFAs for abbreviated, and literally I felt like I was being bombarded with information from some of these agencies, and one of the first things that sort of pops up on screen is we can pay you this much amount of money a week to become a carer, and it seemed like they seem to go by quite a business model. So if you explain to me what's the difference between the council's adoption and fostering services and these independent companies.
Okay, so we are obviously part of the local authority, Leicestershire County Council. We do have to work under tight budgets and resources. Independent fostering agencies are organisations that's been set up, and a lot of foster carers who are with these agencies are doing really, really good. There are some who are looking after non-Muslim children, Muslim children. There are some at times where we've not been able to place Muslim children, especially our unaccompanied asylum seekers who come from out of the country, and they've been taken, and they've done an excellent job. But just kind of slightly coming away from that, when as Leicestershire County Council, we cover a wide range, and that's including Oadby, Loughborough, which, you know, there's a presence of Muslim families within these areas. And from a practical point of view, I think the kind of issue at the moment is whenever a child needs a placement, we would always first try and look at our in-house carers to see what's kind of available, whether we've got any vacant spaces. Now, if we have a Muslim child, part of the matching process that takes place is we would look at the child's culture, religion, heritage, all these things to make sure that it's a good match for a child. But unfortunately, sometimes what happens is we're not able to place a Muslim child with a Muslim foster carer simply because we haven't got any Muslim foster carers who are kind of vacant. And looking at budgets and everything like that, it may be a far more better match for this child with developmental delay to go to a foster carer who has more experiences in caring, because with that baby, a lot of emphasis it needs to be given at that time to the security, stability, and safety of that child.
So this is a non-Muslim family you're talking about placing a Muslim child
That's right.
with,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
So what that means is that I mean, we do have a lot of non-Muslim carers who do go out their way in order to cater for Muslim children, and this is
And
part
how
of,
is that? And how
well,
is that
it's
done?
part of the training and support we kind of offer. So we would kind of meet with them. I mean, I myself, I'm not just part of the team around the child, as we call it, but I'm part of the fostering service. So if I'm needed anywhere within the service, I'm obviously there. So kind of going through exactly what we kind of offer will be a little bit long, and I won't be able to say kind of what I wanted to say. So just quickly, there is support out there to make sure that non-Muslim carers look after Muslim children in a culturally appropriate way, and that's like, you know, with the food issue, with the pet issue, and all of these kind of things. But just going back to the different types of fostering, we have foster carers who look after children, prefer to look after children 12 years, 15 years, 18 years. We've got emergency, so if you're not available during the day but you're available during the night, you know, you can take a child in. If you're not doing full-time fostering, you can offer respite, and that's just to give weekends to other carers who need the placement. If you've got specialist profession, you can be a specialist foster carer for Leicestershire County Council. And in terms, there's a lot of support out there as well, because I know I've got a minute and you need to kind of go.
So you get varying degrees. I think I'm just going to ask the producer, have we got one more slot, or are we... Oh, okay. So we've literally got a minute, and you've been listening. Oh, we can get one. Our producers extended our time slightly, so we're going to go to a break in a minute, and then we'll be back after the break. Just because I think it's such an important topic to cover, and I do want to come back to you, Denise. You've been listening to the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. Thank you to our listeners watching on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for those who have sent a text as well. Please do keep your questions coming in, and we'll be back with the panel after the break to talk more about foster placements. And I also want to come back to Kasim, because I want you to talk to our listeners about what advice would you give them to come forward to be prospective foster carers as well. So I think that's really important. And we'll be back after the break. You are listening to the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. Our text number is 07450 Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us on the Community Heroes show. I am here with three very unsung heroes who are doing making a massive difference in their communities with fostering and adoption. You are listening to Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM, and as mentioned, you can join us on Facebook Live. You can tune in on the radio. Get texting in your questions. We have an extra half an hour, so we would like to hear from you. Our studio number is 07450 925 084 for our text, and you can give us a call as well on 0116 212 9324. Thank you for all your feedback so far. Zamin, I'd like to say thank you for all your support as well in the support and guidance that you've given me in regards to this topic. And it's been really, really, really helpful. Now, I think one thing that we haven't touched on with you, Kasim, is looking and talking about birth parents of the little girl who you have in care. Can you tell me a bit more about how contact works with those birth parents, where you meet, how long it's for, and, you know, what do they feel about you? What do you feel about them? Because, you know, from a previous conversation I had with Denise on the break, she said a lot of the parents that she comes across, they're just really sad. You know, it's more a case of they're sad than bad parents. And, you know, we're going to explore shortly about why children go into care as well. But what has your experience been of birth parents?
Yeah, sure. I think in terms of the arrangement, Denise can probably elaborate how that is arranged. But in terms of, we get told where we need to take the child to. So it's usually a contact center. So, for example, we are taking the baby that is in our placement at the moment 3 times a week. And that
3 times? Wow.
3 times a week,
Okay.
and it lasts for 2 hours. So in terms of how the birth parents come across is that if we put ourselves in their shoes, their baby has been taken away. And of course, they're really, really anxious, and that is the behavior in the initially. We are anxious too, because we don't know how they might feel, you know, seeing their baby in our arms. So I think we got over it in the first couple of sort of weeks in terms of when we started speaking to them. We realized they are anxious because they don't know what's going on with their baby, who these people are. They're looking after their child. A lot of that is just anxiety. Once we got past over that, we now have a very good relation where she's bringing stuff for our child, of course, and there's a lot of feedback going on from between us in terms of how we are looking after a baby, what are the needs. And so she's quite happy in terms of, you know, she's very at comfort now knowing the baby's actually been looked after quite well. And we have a very good relationship. It has developed. So it's quite a shared responsibility at the moment. So I think it's, at the moment, everything is fine. But initially there is anxiety in terms of, you know, not knowing who these people are and how might they, you know, I think once you start putting yourself in their shoes, things start to make sense. Why would they be anxious to begin with?
I think it's a really good topic that Kasim's obviously touched on, about putting yourself in their shoes. It's about that child, because somebody would feel, you know, 3 times the contact, that's a lot of contact. And initially that's what foster care is.
It does sound like a lot.
Yeah, it does sound like a lot. But one is the kind of court process, because when a child does come into care and the local authority is seeking to get an order, a kind of a care order, we've got a process of 26 weeks. Now within that, the parents are also getting assessed about how their contact is with the child. Are they able to care for that child? And that's why our foster carers would be part of promoting that level of contact. So it's not that, I know Kasim has said we've been told, but he does understand, as well as his wife, the reasons why contact's quite important for that child. And that's why if they're putting that child in the center, if they're putting themselves in the center of it, then they would probably feel like, we don't want to go 3 times. But if they're putting the child in the center,
it's their
then
attachment needs.
Exactly.
And do you have to be present for for the duration, for the 2 hours?
No,
Or do you drop off and
you
and then
essentially
pick
just
up?
drop them off and then pick them at the end of the contract. Yeah.
Okay. So does that leave you any time and interaction with the birth parent, or are you not privy to, like, are you privy to the information prior to why the child was taken into care? The one,
Yes,
the child you have?
So when the child is placed with you, you are given all the contextual information.
Right, okay, so you're
For
given
two
that
reasons.
background. Yeah.
2 reasons. Once, because you should know what's going on with the child, and then you can actually cater your support in terms of what child actually needs. So what sort of background the child is coming from in terms of their own difficulties, abuse, neglect, and so on. So you cater that your own sort of care around what's needed for the child.
Okay. Now, Denise, I'm just going to come back to you because if you could explain to us how children end up in local authority care and what can we do to stop that from happening in the first place?
That's a massive question.
Okay,
and I really wish I had the ultimate answer to that. I mean, children end up coming into the care system for a vast variety of reasons. However, the unfortunate common denominator in all of that is around trauma and abuse. Obviously, children being removed from their birth families is an extreme way of dealing with incidents in life. So we would only be looking at doing that in the most extreme of cases. So we have children who have been physically abused. They have been mentally, emotionally, and sexually abused throughout periods of time during their life. Even where there's not evidence of any abuse having happened, the trauma of being removed from their home and coming into the care of a complete stranger is no doubt absolutely going to impact on our children. And that's absolutely where our amazing foster carers come into play. That understanding of your own sense of anxiety, as Kasim said, thinking, how are we going to look after this child? Are we going to be able to cater for his or her needs? Actually, if you multiply that many, many times, and then think about that, actually that's where that child actually is. I'm a great believer in however we care for children, it's about love and showing that love and support for a child. And we want every single one of our 581 children and young people to feel loved, valued and cared for. And that absolutely is where we're looking for people to come from. If you've got that, we can help you with everything else. We can answer all of your questions. We can provide the training and the support. Bilal obviously is one of our many amazing foster care, supervising social workers. They'll all be fighting over you now, Bilal. But we have a great, experienced team of social workers who will be able to support our carers.
And that's what it comes down to, really, doesn't it? Once you've got past the barriers and misconceptions of what fostering and adoption involves, you're then able to see the bigger picture, the needs of that individual child who could be placed with you. And, you just, the next thing really is to just give them your unconditional love and support, because as we know, some of these children have come from some quite traumatic and deprived families, and all they want is nurturing, care, love and attention. And that's obviously what Kasim's doing with the little girl in his care.
Just to add to that, we have a huge, although it kind of varies about how much sometimes we get a week, but unaccompanied asylum seekers coming from places like Sudan, Iraq, Iran, Eritrea, Afghanistan, who these are kind of, or they are kind of war-torn countries, and they come in here to try and, some have a better life, some have just really, the circumstances over there have just been really bad. Some have seen their parents being shot in front of their own eyes, there's a lot of PTSD afterwards when they come over here, that they need kind of therapy. So there's these children,
Counselling, yeah.
and I think it would be fair to say that the majority of them are Muslim, and this is one instance where we would kind of look in our in-house carers to see who have we got available.
So
and
those
then-
with the most experience.
yeah. But what we're finding ourselves doing is approaching independent fostering agencies
Yeah.
because of the cultural religious match. Because at the moment we've got very few Muslim carers, and I think it would be fair to say that had we, if we had more Muslim carers, the time also that these children coming from these war-torn countries being placed is kind of much quicker too.
So if can just on behalf of our listeners out there, if anyone is listening in, again, it's the Ramadan special on EAVA 102.5 FM. If any of our listeners were interested in just in supporting a Muslim child, is that an option for someone to call in and say, actually, I'm really, this is means a lot to me. Can I support a child from a Muslim background, or is that not an option for them?
I mean, there's two things here because they're both specialist areas.
Yeah.
One is the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, which out of that majority are Muslim, and one is you've got children on a day-to-day basis who kind of come in through a different system, which if you're fostering with Leicestershire and you've come in with that, the only way that you'll be able to foster a child is if that child's Muslim, then we don't have many. I think it would be fair to say that, wouldn't it, Denise?
Yeah, currently there are 2 of our children out of the 581 who are Muslim. So absolutely, as you say, you could potentially be waiting for some time, and I think that's unfair
Of course,
to.
I'm just thinking that
Yeah.
actually most of our listeners out there would, if they're interested in fostering an adoption, I'm sure would be open to hosting, children from all different ethnic backgrounds and different faiths. But there may be someone who's wanting to.
So like I said,
No.
with the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, the majority are Muslims. So it's more likely that when we do have an arrival, if you're an in-house Leicestershire County foster carer, then that child would be placed with you. I think it's also
to have a child in care who comes in
because
as an unaccompanied asylum seeker, they need to be registered with you and have been through all your checks and the processes.
Yes.
Yeah, so all I mean, the process is the same. Yeah, so you're going through the fostering process, regardless of whatever type of children you want to kind of look after. Yeah, whether it's unaccompanied asylum seekers, whether you just want to generally look after children, Muslim and kind of non-Muslim. I mean, an example, yesterday, one of my colleagues asked me about this child coming from a war-torn country in a state of fasting. Arrived at the early hours and is quite adamant that he's not breaking his fast.
Wow.
So who's going to be there to kind of advise that there's certain exemptions around fasting for travellers? This is why we need certain expertise within the system, as well as foster carers and professionals. Alhamdulillah, we are lucky enough to have a Muslim, like you mentioned, Zaymeen in the kind of adoption assessments. We've got Anisha in the fostering. We've got Abu, who's an independent reviewing officer that scrutinizes authority plans. In different sections, we've got enough kind of expertise to make sure that if anybody from a Muslim background did apply to Leicestershire County Council for fostering, their needs would be looked at on an individual basis.
I think that's the important thing for us to emphasise, really, that Leicestershire County Council is extremely open and flexible. Actually, we're looking at people holistically. We're looking at you as a human, as a potential fostering family. And obviously for all of us, part of who we are may be a religion, a cultural way of living. And actually that is all part of our assessment and understanding as to who you are. And that's our richness, really, because every one of those 581 children has very different needs. So actually, we couldn't place all of them with the same type of carer. So actually we need to cater to have as many different people from different walks of life with different life experiences to suit the needs of our children. So please get in touch.
And I've just had another question in. What can we do if we can't foster care ourselves? So this is a question from somebody listening in, thinking that they might not have enough time to dedicate to fostering, but if how can they support anyway? Like what kind of support can they give? Is there a friends of organization or anything similar that's set up to help the lives of those like Kasim? It might be cooking or supporting in any other way for that family. So yeah, is there anything like that?
I'm bursting to tell you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention
there
that
might also be.
I have a carer.
Yeah.
Who took on a new placement. Now, while she was going through all of that, the local church colleagues cooked for her and supported her a lot. So that's obviously kind of one option that, as a community, you kind of step in for the basic things. And I know Denise is quite raring to mention about the schemes we have.
Yeah, I mean, I spend my whole life saying this, but fostering is something that not everybody can do, absolutely. But you can help us find all of those foster carers that are out there in our community. So you can find us at Fostering Leicestershire on Facebook. As many people do, share our posts, tell people about events that are going on, say, why don't you get in touch with your local authority, Leicestershire County Council, and find out about fostering. Because the way we look at that is that the next person that rings us or the next person that sends us an email may actually be the perfect foster carer for 582, the next child that comes into our care, and that is right for them. So actually everybody can help just by being open and saying, have you thought about fostering? Yep. We probably all know people in our lives and you think, oh, they're just so great with children or with young people. Why don't you get in touch and find out about fostering? It's something that you could do. So please share our Facebook, Twitter, come along and see us at events and have a look at our website as well. The other way that you can help is by being an independent visitor for our children in care.
Oh, okay.
So that's a voluntary position. And actually you would have to go through a short assessment process, but not the full assessment process of 4 to 6 months. And actually for some of our children in care, the only adults that they have in their life might be their foster carers, their teachers, and family members, etc. However, they may not have an independent person that is there just for them. So as an adult, you could visit them once a month, probably for a couple of hours on a Saturday morning. So if that's something that you're interested in, we'd be really happy to hear from you.
And that's the same for the unaccompanied asylum seekers too, for independent visitors within the community.
Do you know what? You guys really are unsung heroes. Thank you so much for being with me today. You have really given such a great insight into the world of fostering and adoption, because actually when you think about it, so many different things come racing to your head, and there's so many different portals or ways to get involved. And I'm really glad that you've managed to clarify some of the misconceptions or the myths surrounding extended families and birth parents, and some of the barriers we've looked at. And again, from an Islamic perspective, I would urge anyone who is even considering to get in touch, because there'll be great reward for you, inshallah, to support a child who is in the system. Now, just lastly, I've just got an announcement to make on behalf of Salma and Fahana. Tomorrow, please get your donations into the Madani High School as part of the Ramadan food drive. I will be there from 4 till 7 if anyone wants to meet and discuss more about fostering and adoption. I look forward to joining you again next week. Assalamu alaikum.